There's something unsettling about a world that only behaves when you're watching it. You think you're standing in front of an objective, fixed reality. But the moment you stop looking, it changes. Not because you moved, not because someone tampered with it, but because your very observation was what kept it in form. This is not science fiction. This is the fabric of quantum physics, and it's been quietly unraveling everything we thought we knew. You are not just in the universe. The universe is behaving as if it's in you. And the moment you realize this, everything about your life, your choices, your pain, your dreams, begins to tremble, because they were never just events. They were echoes of your attention. Let's begin here. A single electron. A speck so tiny it defies logic, yet it holds the key to the most profound truth about reality. We fire it toward a wall with 2 slits, just to see what it does. When we don't look, when we don't observe, the electron behaves like a wave. It passes through both slits at once, as if it's smeared across possibility, undefined. But the moment we place a detector, the moment we dare to look, it collapses into a particle. A single choice, single path, as if reality itself is saying, now that you're watching, I'll behave. This is the observer effect. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Because it's not just about electrons. It's about you. You've seen it in your own life, even if you didn't have a name for it. The person who behaves differently when you're present. The job that appears the moment you decide to trust. The solution that only shows itself when you stop trying to control. Could it be that reality is responding? Not to your actions, but to your awareness. This question has haunted the greatest minds, from Einstein to Wheeler to Bohr. And now it's knocking at your door. Because if what we observe shapes what is, then the greatest illusion was ever believing we were separate from the world we watch. Pause for a moment. You are not just a passive participant. You are the lens that focuses potential into form. You are the witness that carves timelines from mist. And whether you realize it or not, you're already collapsing possibilities with every thought, every glance, every breath. So what have you been collapsing? What worlds have you built by accident? Simply because you didn't know your power. You see, the observer effect is not just physics. It's the blueprint of manifestation. It's the mechanics of belief. It's the reason your fears materialize and your dreams flicker at the edge of reach. Not because you're broken, but because you didn't know the rules of the game until now. Now let's go deeper. Imagine walking into a room full of instruments, guitars, drums, violins, and striking a single note on one string. Only one. And yet, across the room, the violin vibrates in harmony. The drums hum. The guitar begins to echo that note. This is resonance. And this is how reality moves when you look at it with emotion. Not just attention, but emotion. Because attention is the direction. Emotion is the voltage. When you look at your life through the lens of anger, fear, despair, you send that frequency into the field, and the field responds in kind. But when you witness life with stillness, with wonder, with peace, the universe bends toward you like a sunflower turning toward light. And no, this isn't just metaphor. The heart has a measurable electromagnetic field. The brain emits frequency. And thought, paired with feeling, sends a signal into what quantum theorists now call the unified field. This field is not empty. It is potential. It is possibility waiting for you. And you've been communicating with it every single day, whether you knew it or not. Have you ever noticed how a single moment of clarity can change your entire day? A breath of forgiveness, and suddenly, people treat you differently. A moment of surrender, and the thing you've been chasing shows up unannounced. Coincidence? Or are you the cause behind the curtain? This is what the mystics tried to say, before science had words for it. That when you observe something, not just with your eyes, but with your inner gaze, reality starts to shape itself accordingly. This is why monks meditate, why mystics go silent, why prophets retreat to the desert, not to escape the world, but to recalibrate their frequency before they re-enter it. And now, here you are, no longer separate from the knowing. So let me ask you, what have you been watching with fear? What have you been ignoring with avoidance? And what would happen if, just for a moment, you looked at your life with love? Pause here, breathe, because your next observation might just change the next chapter of your story. If this message has stirred something within you, If you're beginning to remember the truth beneath the illusion, you're not alone. Others are awakening too. And the more we share this remembering, the more the illusion fades. So if you're ready to see clearly, subscribe to the Quantum Eye. You're here for a reason. And so are we. We're only just beginning. Let's go back in time. Before laboratories and equation. Before double-slit experiments and particle accelerator. Back to when the only tool we had was awareness itself. The sages of old, standing beneath open skies, asked a question not so different from the physicists of today. What is this place? And why does it seem to echo me? They didn't use words like observer effect or probability collapse, but they noticed something profound, that when the mind is quiet, the world begins to speak. And when the soul is still, it begins to shape the world. The Vedas spoke of Maya, not as illusion in the way we use the word today, but as the shimmering appearance of reality, shaped by the perceiver's state of consciousness. The Taoists said the universe is like water, still until disturbed. And what disturbs it? The mind, the I, the self. Every ancient wisdom tradition, without collusion, without shared language, arrived at a similar truth. The world is not out there. The world is in here, projected like a lantern's light across the canvas of perception. And now, thousands of years later, the physicists say, yes, it's true. The particle isn't a particle until we look. Until it is witnessed is a wave, a cloud of maybes, a fog of possibility. And your gaze is the catalyst. Not just your eyes, but your presence. How could this be? Why would the universe hinge on you? Because it was always meant to. Because the same intelligence that moves galaxies, tearing through your eyes, let that land. The universe is not outside of you, and you are not inside of it. You and it are the same field of awareness, observing itself from every possible angle. What we call me and that, what we call subject and object, are merely dance partners in the same cosmic rhythm. And the more deeply you look, the more the illusion of separation begins to dissolve. It starts with physics, but it ends with you. Now imagine this. You're standing at a fork in the road. Two possible futures, both real, both reachable. And you ask the universe for a sign. But the sign doesn't come until you choose to look. Because the moment you give your attention to one path, that path begins to form beneath your feet. You weren't waiting for the universe. The universe was waiting for you. You were the signal. You were the decision. You were the observer. So many people believe they're stuck. They wait for evidence, for proof, for permission. But they don't realize that life is waiting for them to observe something different, to hold a new image in mind, to offer a different frequency, to claim a new truth. That's the secret behind every breakthrough, every healing, every so-called miracle. It's not magic. It's alignment. When the observer aligns with possibility, possibility crystallizes into fact. When the observer chooses a new belief, reality has no choice but to respond. You've seen this before. The friend who always expects things to go wrong, and they do. The child who believes the world is safe and somehow it is. The artist who sees beauty in everything and creates it wherever they go. These aren't just coincidences. They are collapses of probability, guided by belief and awareness. And that means you've been shaping your world all along. Not deliberately maybe, but consistently. Every fear you rehearsed, every doubt you indulged, every vision you entertained, even briefly, they weren't just thoughts. They were instruction, sent into the field, observed, and therefore received. Now, you might be wondering, if I've been doing this all along, shaping reality without realizing it, then what else am I doing unconsciously? What else have I built by accident? And more importantly, what could I build on purpose? This is the moment the observer awakens, when you begin to choose what you see, not just with your eyes, but with your soul. Look at your life, where you live, who surrounds you, what fills your mind in quiet moments. This is your field. This is your reality, and it didn't arrive by accident. It was shaped, moment by moment, by the frequency of your attention. And the good news is, it's still shaping, right now, even as you listen. Even now, new timelines hover around you, waiting to be observed. waiting to be chosen, waiting to collapse into form. And all they ask is for you to look with new eyes, to look with intent, with reverence, with knowing, not as a victim of circumstance, but as the initiator of form. The moment you do, the shift begins. Subtle at first, then obvious, then unstoppable. And the world will ask, what changed? And only you will know. You did. If you've ever felt unseen by the universe, it wasn't because it abandoned you. It was because you abandoned your gaze. But now, you're remembering. And remembering is the first act of creation. You can't unknow this. And you weren't meant to. You're not watching this by accident. And you're not waking up alone. There are others who are learning to see, others who are collapsing light into meaning, others who are remembering how to choose. If you're one of them, subscribe to the Quantum Eye, and share this message with those who are ready. The shift begins when the observer returns. And you have returned. There is something strange that happens when you stop needing proof. Reality starts proving itself, not because you became smarter, not because your situation changed, but because you finally looked, not through the lens of fear or doubt, but through certainty. The observer doesn't wait for evidence. The observer creates it. This is where the old model of thinking breaks down. We were taught to believe in linear cause and effect. Action leads to outcome. But in quantum reality, observation is the cause, form is the effect. It's not, I'll believe it when I see it. It's I'll see it when I believe it. And belief isn't a wish. It's a frequency. Pattern you broadcast into the field. With every emotion, every choice, every focus. So what are you broadcasting? What have you unknowingly sent out? Again and again. In the background of your thoughts? I'll never be enough. I always mess it up. No one sees me. Life is hard. These aren't just inner monologue. They're blueprints. And the field responds with form. But here's the grace. You can revise the blueprint at any moment. You don't need to fix the outside world. You only need to change the witness. Because when the witness evolves, so does the wave. Mystics have known this. That reality is a mirror, not a map. It doesn't show you what to follow. It shows you who you are in that moment. So when you look out and see chaos, look again. It may not be the world that's disordered. It may be the observer who is misaligned. But that's not a curse. That's the invitation. The invitation to stop seeking and start seeing. To stop waiting and start choosing. Stop surviving and start observing with intention. When you do this, you step out of the old game. The aim of reaction, of randomness, of helplessness. And you step into the role you were always meant to play. The conscious observer, not the controller, not the manipulator, but the one who aligns with truth and lets reality fold to meet them. Think about this. Every truly transformative moment in your life didn't come when you forced it. It came when something inside you shifted, when you looked differently, when you surrendered the old narrative. Maybe it was in the middle of heartbreak, maybe during illness, maybe during complete stillness. But somewhere in that moment, your perception cracked open, and new reality poured in. That was you, the observer. And the moment you changed your gaze, life couldn't help but follow. You see, observation isn't just attention. It's energy. And when that energy becomes clean, when it becomes coherent, calm, uncluttered, it becomes magnetic. Because reality doesn't resist alignment. It welcomes it. That's why people speak of flow, of things clicking into place, of synchronicity, of miracles. These aren't accidents. They're responses. Field responding to the observer who has finally remembered who they are. You were never powerless. You were just unconscious of your gaze. But now you see. And seeing is the origin of all change. Let's go deeper. There's a kind of perception that doesn't rely on thought. It doesn't analyze. It doesn't measure. It doesn't predict. It simply witnesses, fully, without judgment, without grasping, without fear. The ancient mystics called this the eye of the heart. Science might call it coherent observation. Spirituality might call it presence. But the effect is the same. It's the kind of seeing that organizes reality around it, not by demand, but by alignment. When you witness something with full awareness, without interference, you bring it into coherence. This is why people feel healed when they're fully seen. This is why nature becomes more vibrant when we walk in stillness. This is why the body begins to self-correct when we bring awareness to our breath. Because the act of observation is the act of harmonization. And the more we remember how to observe in this way, the more the world around us begins to resonate in kind. It's not about fixing. It's about seeing clearly. No noise. No narrative. Just awareness. And in that space, reality aligns. This is why your thoughts matter. Not because they're good or bad, but because they observe. And what they observe, they begin to form. So now let's come back to you. To this moment. To the space where your awareness is currently resting. Is it resting in worry? In comparison? In self-judgment? Or is it resting in possibility? In reverence? In knowing? Because where your awareness rests, the world begins to bend. Let that truth live in you for a while. Breathe with it. Sit with it. And then, when you're ready, look again. Observe from a new place. Because reality is waiting for your return. And the moment you see it differently, it becomes something different. If this message is reshaping how you look at your own life, if you've felt the mirror shift even slightly, you're not alone. Others are waking up too. Others are returning to the gaze. Others are ready to see. If this resonates, share it. Not to convince, but to awaken. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the Quantum Eye. Your observation matters, not just to you, but to the field, to all of us. Because when you observe with love, you change the world you observe, and the world observes you back. There's a strange kind of magic in being still. Not the stillness of inactivity, but the stillness of attention. Kind of stillness that watches, not to judge, not to fix, but simply to witness. This is where reality becomes responsive. Not because you made a move, but because you became aware. Awareness is the deepest form of movement, because it's not doing, it's being. And when you return to pure being, the universe responds with form. This is the mystery, the paradox, that when you let go of trying to change the world begins to change with you, not in opposition, but in reflection. That is the heart of the observer effect. The field does not force itself upon you. It waits, patiently, like a mirror, and the moment you gaze into it with new vision, it shifts. Because the gaze is not just light hitting objects. The gaze is a bridge between thought and form, between energy and matter, between what is felt and what becomes. The sages used to say that God sees all, and perhaps what they meant wasn't surveillance, but response. That there is an intelligence that notices when you notice, an infinite consciousness that waits for you to participate. This is what the double-slit experiment revealed. Not just a strange quirk of quantum particles, but a doorway into the nature of consciousness itself. Particles behave differently when observed, not because they're nervous, but because they're not fixed. They are potential, and potential responds to present. Your life is not a set path. It is a field of possibility, and the one you walk is the one you're willing to look at. But you must look clearly. You must look truthfully. You must look with intention. Because if your gaze is blurred by fear, or clouded by shame, or narrowed by belief, then what you see will be shaped by that distortion. This is why the ancient texts urge purification, not to appease something above, but to clear the lens. Because the clearer the lens, the truer the reality that forms. You have already seen this in your life, in the days when everything flows, and in the days when nothing seems to work. The world didn't change overnight. You did. The way you looked shifted. The frequency of your attention changed, and so the field responded. This is not coincidence. This is quantum alignment. So now we ask, if this is true, if your observation is the sculptor of experience, what would happen if you began to observe deliberately? What if you approached your day not as something to survive, but something to shape? What if you looked at the people around you not as random figures, but as reflections of your own inner narrative? What if you observed your challenges, not as obstacles, but as energy waiting to become something else? Because all of it, the struggle, the silence, the surprises, they are waves. Waves waiting for your gaze, waiting for the command of consciousness to collapse them into something specific. and your command is your observation. Now you may be wondering, how do I observe deliberately? What does that look like? How do I stop watching from fear and start witnessing from power? It begins with one simple shift: noticing the way you notice. Become aware of your awareness. Catch yourself in the act of unconscious observation, judging, resisting, assuming, and pause. Breathe. Recalibrate the lens. Choose again. This is not about suppressing thoughts. It's about realizing that your thoughts are tools of perception, not facts, not identities, not commands, just tools. And you are the one holding them. When you observe yourself observing, you step into the space between thought and reality, the space where transformation lives. This is the sacred space, where time slows, where clarity sharpens, where the field becomes malleable. And in that space, you begin to realize that what you once feared is simply energy without form. And you are the form giver. Now feel that. Breathe with it. Know that it is true. You have always been the witness. But now, you are the conscious witness. And with that awareness, you are no longer at the mercy of the unseen forces around you. You are in relationship with them. You are co-creating with them. You are collapsing light into experience with every focused breath. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, the next time the world seems heavy or out of reach or too fast to catch, pause. Return to the observer. Return to the space behind the noise. Return to stillness. Because from stillness, you can see, and when you see with clarity, life responds in kind. If you're beginning to feel the edges of the illusion fade, if you're remembering that you are not just a body in a world, but a frequency in a field, then this message is for you. You were meant to remember. You were meant to witness. You were meant to reshape reality, not by force, but by observation. And if this truth lives in you, subscribe to the quantum eye. Let others know. Because the world doesn't change through preaching. It changes through presence. And your presence is powerful. Every breath you take is an act of alignment, not with oxygen, but with awareness. The moment you become conscious of your breath, you stop being a machine, and you begin being a mirror that reflects the field, a mirror that shapes the field. This is the forgotten truth. Awareness is the doorway, breath is the bridge, and observation is the act of creation. When the mystics told us to be still and know, they weren't offering a metaphor. They were giving us a map, a way to return to the only place reality can actually change, the moment of observation. And when you arrive there, in stillness, in presence, you begin to see that your old self wasn't wrong. It was simply asleep to the fact that the world was never static, never fixed, never indifferent. It was alive, and it was listening, always listening, for your next gaze. So let's ask a deeper question now. What is it that looks out through your eyes? What is it that witnesses this unfolding moment? You might say, me. But what is me? A name? A story? A body? A collection of memories? Or is it something deeper? Something that was there before the memories? Before the name? Before the form? Could it be that what looks out through your eye is the same awareness that stirs in trees, that dances in oceans, that breathes through stars? Could it be that consciousness is not yours, but is, and your body is the lens, your mind is the filter, your soul is the echo, but the awareness itself, it belongs to the whole. This is why the observer effect is more than a scientific oddity. It is a cosmic invitation, an invitation to remember that consciousness is not located in you. You are located within it, and that every act of perception, every moment of witnessing, is the entire universe observing itself through you. That is why you matter, not because of your resume, not because of your productivity, but because you are aware, and your awareness bends the field. When you feel awe, wonder, gratitude, stillness, you're not reacting to something outside of you. You're sensing with the rhythm beneath all things. And that rhythm is observation. That rhythm is relationship. That rhythm is remembrance. Let's go deeper. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when the seeker stops asking for signs and becomes the sign, When the observer no longer begs for evidence, because they realize they are the evidence, that the world only seems chaotic when they forget who they are, and it becomes harmonious. The moment they remember, that memory, it lives in the silence, it lives in the breath, it lives in the space between thoughts. That is the eye behind the eye. The witness that watches even your inner dialogue. The awareness that never sleeps, never fades, never leaves. It is the thread that binds everything you've ever experienced. And it doesn't need proof. It is the proof. Now feel that truth again. What you observe becomes. This is why self-image matters. Not because of confidence, but because your self-image is what you keep watching. And what you watch, the field supports. If you see yourself as small, life will match it. If you observe failure, the field will reflect it. If you expect resistance, it will arrive. But if you shift the image, if you observe something truer, something brighter, something higher, then reality shifts. Not slowly, not randomly, but precisely. Because the field is exact. It mirrors your observation with elegance. It never misses. And if you're wondering why change seems slow, it may be because your gaze hasn't stayed steady long enough. You looked, then doubted. You believed, then questioned. You dreamed, then feared. And the wave never had time to collapse. But now you know. Now you remember. Now you're ready to hold your gaze. To become consistent in present, coherent in thought, and deliberate in feeling. That is the trinity of observation. Focus, frequency, faith. 1. Focus is where you look. Frequency is how you feel. Faith is what you expect. And together, they collapse infinite waves into one reality. Yours. You are the artist, the sculptor. The field doesn't resist you. It reflects you. And what you see now is only a shadow of what you've yet to observe. So observe higher. Observe with softness. Observe with love. And watch the world reassemble itself. Not because it changed on its own, but because you showed up. As the true observer, if this message resonates with the part of you that remembers, even if you can't explain why, you're not alone. Others are waking up with you. Others are remembering the truth that lives beneath the noise. Others are beginning to observe on purpose. If this is you, share this message. Let it ripple. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the Quantum Eye. Because together we're not just watching the world, we're watching it change. And in doing so, we change with it. There is something sacred about ending. Not because they are final, but because they are thresholds. Moments when one gaze softens, and a new one begins. That's what this is. Not a conclusion. Turning point. A breath. Before you look again, but this time, with intention. Because the observer you are now is not the one who began this journey. You've shifted, not in belief, but in perception. And that is enough to bend the field. You no longer look at reality as something done to you. You see it for what it is. A response, a relationship, a mirror. You see that nothing is fixed, only witnessed. And what you witness, with emotion, with meaning, with presence, becomes flesh, becomes time, becomes form. You now understand what the sages meant when they said, "You are the light of the world," because light doesn't just illuminate, it observes. And observation creates. Let that live in your bones. Let it color the way you rise each morning. Let it soften the way you speak to yourself. Because if your attention creates ripples in the field, then self-love isn't a suggestion. It's a frequency command. The way you witness yourself is the way reality will follow. So witness yourself as whole, as ready, as awakening, and watch what unfolds. You no longer wait for signs. You realize you are the signal. The turning point, the shift. It was never outside of you. It was never beyond your reach. It was always where it is now, at the edge of your awareness, waiting to be observed. Because reality waits for you to look. You are not here by accident. You were called here not to learn something new, but to remember what you already knew. To remember that your presence is a force, that your consciousness is creative, that your gaze is holy. The old you sought evidence, the new you becomes it. The old you waited, the new you watches with power. And the old you feared collapse. But the new you knows Collapse is how reality formed. Wave into particle. Energy into experience. Possibility into truth. This is not just quantum theory. It is the architecture of existence. And you, dear observer, are part of the design. So move with care, but also with boldness. Observe not with fear, but with fire, because everything is responding, and everything has always been. This is the truth behind synchronicity, behind timing, behind coincidence, behind prayer, behind manifestation. It's not magic. It's mechanics. The subtle, responsive mechanics of a conscious universe, waiting for conscious eyes. You have those eyes now. You always did. You just forgot how to use them. But no longer. Now you know what you are. Now you know why you're here. Now you know the truth behind the veil. That to see is to choose. That to look is to shape. That to witness is to create. And that your life has always been waiting for you to notice it. Finally stop seeing it as fate and begin seeing it as a field waiting to reflect your light, your love, your frequency. So what will you observe next? What timeline will you look at long enough for it to become real? What version of yourself will you honor with unwavering attention? Because that is all that's required. Not perfection, not control, not endless doing, just a gaze, held with faith, held with presence, held with knowing. This is the way. This is the method. This is the observer effect, alive in you. And if you've made it this far, you're ready. You are the one who sees, the one who knows, the one who chooses what to observe, and therefore, what to become. Let this message live in your cells. Let it ripple through your days. Let it shape the way you look at everything. And if this journey has opened something in you, you already know what to do. Subscribe to the Quantum Eye. Not to follow, but to remember, because there is more to see, more to observe, more to become, and we're just beginning. The eye is open, the wave is waiting. So look, and let the world begin again.